Hey, it's Don the Auction Professor. It's Sunday, so it's time again for what I sold on eBay. I'm not going to show you again everything. I'll just do some selections out of it, and this is from my one account only. We may share some of the other accounts here in the near future. We've been going on talking about that. There's some items that obviously we don't want to give away all of our secrets and where a lot of our money comes from. You know, I'm not going to share everything with you. There's things that we do that, you know, there's very few people know about, or that very few people actually do or are able to do them, that make us a lot of money on eBay and Amazon. So, you know, some of that's going to be private just for us, just so we don't have the competition that could hurt our business. But we're going to go over to the screen and show you just some of the things. This is a selection. I had a little more time this morning. It's, I think, like... It's about 6 in the morning right now, so I get up really early a lot. I'm an early bird. Me and the wife, you know, in season we ride our bikes real early, sometimes before we take the kids to school, or in summer we ride them, you know, before 7. We're already at the park. You know, if they open at 6, 6:30, we're there at the park already, or if they open at 7, we're there a few minutes before, just so we can, you know, get a spot and get ready. But that's us in the morning. We have a regiment we do every morning. We have a routine. I have a schedule I keep. So that's kind of just something you should do too. But that's your call. But here we go to the screen.
Okay, so here is the first item. Again, these are just random items. I went through and picked out some of the more interesting items out of what we sold. I tried not to include any clothing. I sold a couple jackets this week, some shirts. I think we actually sold a pair of shoes as well. But again, I'm not going to go into the clothing. I'm not going to show you the comic books that I sold, or, you know, a couple video games that sold, or any of that kind of stuff. It's just pointless. You can see that everywhere, and I mean everywhere. Every single YouTuber seems to have the same kind of stuff. So I'm trying to show you things that, you know, you haven't thought of, or you know, ways to find stuff that, you know, are out of the box for you. This one here is a Rudy Gore. It's a I'm not sure if it's like a fable or a writer or what the case may be, but this person's last name was the same thing as this. They spent $15 on this one, and then they spent $15 on this one here too. Again, just because it's the same last name. So that's something that you can find too on these earlier cards and oddball stuff. Whenever I see an oddball name, I usually put those up before I put up a Smith or a Jones or a Brown or any of the common names that you might run into. People look for the oddball names, literally because of their family or whatever the case may be, or the research and history, or it's a play or something like that. But again, this person bought 2 cards for $15 a piece, so $30 went to this one person. I've got pennies into these. Next item here. I picked up a whole bunch of pins. These are things you see in those quarter little baskets on counters and mom and pop thrift stores, and even sometimes in the big thrift stores. They might go as high as, you know, 50 cents, but they always sell for us, these early ones, especially like Kennedy Space Center, the Space Shuttle, or something along that line. Let's see, next one. This is just a business card. I took 30 on this. It was up for a little while, P83. It was probably up for like 2 months, so I've got, you know, 8 to 10 cents in the listing fees on this. This one was one of the sales, one of the items I put up literally maybe in one of the videos that I was even showing you. This one had watchers, and I literally put it on sale or marked the price down, and then boom. And I didn't do a promoted sale. I didn't pay to promote this. I literally hit the ones that have watchers first, as I've said before. But these items can be slower sellers, so that's what you got to think about. If you put a promoted seller, or if you put it on a promotion, you might just get lucky and that person was looking at that time. It's going to be hard to promote something that there's only a few people looking for. A promoted sale is going to help you on like mass items, like a pair of jeans that everybody has or something like that. But on the collectibles, I honestly don't recommend it. For us, it's just getting new items up and then residual sales. You know, every day of the week we sell something that's been up for a while. That's just the way it works. So you want to build a base of items for an income. So that's what you're looking for in stuff like this. This is something that's going to set, and you can, you know, it's just going to be a surprise sale one day, you know. Boom, I got $30 out of it. You know, this is the kind of stuff that I mess with more. I'd rather have a whole bunch of items up like this and get a large sum of money per each one. Like this one here, this is probably a $1 item I paid, maybe even less. Maybe it came in a big bunch, you know, from a picker. I don't even remember where this one came from. I've got a bunch of these. Not the specific same person, but a bunch of different ones. So, you know, if it sat for a while, a couple months, and I get $30 for it, I'm fine with that. If this sat for a year and I got $30 out of it, I'd be happy with that too. because stuff sells all the time, every day of the week. Our sales are honestly increasing right this minute. The items I'm showing you, these are all items this week. We did almost $2,000 in just postcards just since the last Sunday when I did my last What Sold. That's just this week I did $2,000 in just postcards. We did close to that in just records. That's just records as well, too. And then I've sold all the oddball stuff. I'm not counting, the Victorian trade cards or any of that other stuff in those figures either. So, sales have been very good for us. I can't complain this month at all. We're listing a ton of stuff, so we're selling new stuff. We're selling it quick. We're selling it right away. And it's increasing our sales day by day. That's how it works. You list 100 items, you're going to sell a few of those that same day. And that increases. That's above and beyond what you had up already. That's the residual income. That's how you do it. That's how we can afford to run 90 days on stuff and not list a bunch of the items we just got immediately. We don't have to do that. We've got a rotational basis. We run through the racks when we are on this basis. We'll pull a different shelf each day or whatever the case may be. I've got more items than I can sell in a week, a month, or even 90 days at this point. And it's items that I don't have much into, so I can afford to do that. And again, I've talked about this many, many times. When we buy a lot of stuff, and let's say I bought a whole bunch of stuff for $100, I'm going to go ahead and pull a couple items out of there and sell them immediately and get my $100 back right then. I might have it back that same evening if I do, get a couple good items that are buy it nows and I throw them out there real quick. That's what we do. I'll buy a bunch of stuff and, I'll already know because I've researched it all that I'm going to be able to get some good money out of something out of there right off the bat. And that's what I do. We'll sell that item and then boom, it's gone right away and I got my money back. So if let's say I bought 100 items for $100, I sold 2 or 3 items for $150. I've now got my money back. I've made a little profit and I've paid all the fees and shipping's gone because the buyers pay the shipping. So I've already got my money back. I might have 90 more items that I haven't listed. I can accumulate those. I can sort those until I get a bunch of the same topic or whatever the case may be. If it's Mark's Army Men, for example, I save bunches of Mark's Army Men in different colors and different boxes and bins. So when I get more of them, I can put them together because those sometimes will sell in a big lot much quicker and for a higher dollar because they're getting like a collection all at once. Whether, especially over like selling some of the little figures individually. You're not going to get as much unless there are rare figures. We've sold individual Mark's Little Army Men for, $100, $150, $200 for just one little figure. It was a rare figure. It was, something that doesn't show up very often. So that happens. The rest of them you can save up and build up a collection of them to put them together like that if you run into them all the time. I search for the same things all the time, so I save those and I'll bundle stuff together. It might sit there for 90 days because of that, but I'll get more money than most people because I do that and I can afford to do that. But that's just how it works. In clothing, it doesn't work like that. You're not going to get multiple sales. You're not going to need to build up a bunch of clothing to put a lot together. The only time you're going to put a lot together in clothing is if they're not worth something separately to sell. So, that goes back to research again. It's a lot harder to research clothing to see what they sell because so many people sell them and the prices are all over the place. But in collectibles and antiques, you can pretty much, rest assured know that after you've done your research that you're going to be correct on your information. You know it's worth something or it's not. At least that's the goal, obviously. That's why our success rate is so high with what we buy and what we make profits on, 95% or higher, as a general rule on anything. Yeah, we lose on some stuff, very few items, because we'll research. And if I don't know, I've passed on things. Yes, we've passed on things that we could have made a ton of money on, but we could have also lost, a ton of money by buying those items. I'm never going to sink more than a few $100s into something without being rest assured that I'm going to get my money back pretty quickly or easily. And there's other items we research. I research stuff all the way down to $10 if I have to. It depends on what we're buying, where we're buying it, and the quantity we're buying it for. But let's go on to the next item here. This came with a bunch of magazines. This is an artist. He does comic books. He's, done book illustrations. I believe he did a Stephen King illustration too. I've met this gentleman back in the 70s at a comic book show. I was autographed from way back when. I knew who this was and what this was immediately. He did a lot of horror. If I'm not mistaken, he did Frankenstein and some of the other ones, but he did some actual fine books too. I believe I got around $20 for this. I took an offer. It hadn't been up that long. This doesn't show up that often. On these catalogs like this, what you want to do is look inside of them for an autograph. This one, unfortunately, I didn't have one, but I've gotten books by, leading artists like Stephen King, Anne Rice, and things like that have been autographed on the inside of the book from even savers. We've gotten 2 autographed Anne Rice, Interview with the Vampire, autographed by her at a thrift store just shortly after it came out. And we've actually met her too at Disney World when we worked at Disney, and we got her autograph from my sister-in-law, is a big fan. So, stuff like that sells, and stuff like that we do run into. I run into autograph records all the time, but most people don't think that that's really the autograph on a record, so that's why we come out ahead. As I've talked about before, I've got a couple Elvis autographed records. I got one just not too long ago. Within the last 30 days, I got an autographed 45 by Elvis. Again, not in great condition, but, a couple $100. So look for autographs in all these type of items. This one, you got a 50-50 shot maybe in some cases on stuff like this, whether it's autographed or not. Some of these comic things, they were all autographed. So, you just got to look out for that too. This is just a reference from a specific church. This is one of those 50-cent items on like estate sales and stuff, even at, garage sales, yard sales, flea markets, antique malls. I believe this actually came from an antique mall. Most dealers don't think that history of churches and things like that have much value, or religious historical items. So, they don't do much with them. That's why I do very well in religious medals and books and things like that. This one sold for $18.50. Again, like 50-cent item. Next item, I have a bunch of these. I've been selling them a couple of weeks now. Sales actually picked up on these. A lot of these go overseas. So again, this is another reason that if I'm selling overseas items, there is no summer like you're worried about here. They buy throughout the year, so you're not going to worry like you are here if you've upped your ante on how many international items you sell. Look for items that are specifically international. That's a good way to sell more items. Stuff like the music sells internationally more than clothing does any day of the week. So I sell more music, more oddball items that sell overseas. I'm going to show you, I think I picked out some in here, some items that went overseas. We did almost $700 in overseas sales this week alone, just in overseas sales and just in this week. And that's a big increase. That's $700 that if you're not selling certain items, you're not selling overseas, that you're not going to get. I know everybody would like to have $700 more in sales. If I cut this stuff off, if I cut off global shipping, if I cut off some of the shipping options that I offer, I wouldn't have sold $700 in shipping to overseas, or $700 in items to people overseas. That's increased my sales $700 over and above what other people who aren't doing that are doing. So $700 in overseas sales is a good plus. So maybe, that's an option for you to go and open up your sales to some overseas sales if you're from the U.S. And vice versa. If you're overseas, you can open up your sales to U.S. options. Or if you're in Canada, you can open up to U.S. options. I know the shipping rates issue with, Canada from the U.S. and vice versa. Canadian shipping is fairly expensive to send it to U.S. and vice versa. Even on small items, I charge for first class international to Canada. It's like $10 for, like 3 ounces to like, I think 16 or somewhere in that range. And that's literally what I charge. I charge whatever the going rate is for first class international. I don't up it and try to make a profit or anything like that. But that's just how I do it. And again, that's a big chunk of change in my pocket, $700. That's, almost $8,500 a year extra if that's adding that much every week to my sales. Let's move on to the next item. Records again. This is $59.99. I sold a bunch of records, as I said, many records this past week. On several sites. Again, I do sell records on Amazon. I do sell records on Discogs and eBay on a weekly basis. Records sell from all those sites every single week. I don't think there's a week gone by that I haven't made decent money on all 3 sites selling records. This one did sell for $59.99. It sold overnight, and it's gone. Next item. I used to not mess with these, even in, with the minor condition issues. You can see a corner's bent up there. But these airbrush greeting cards have picked up immensely for us. This sold $9.50. It was only up for F31, only up for a little while, like maybe 2 weeks or less, I think. on this one here, this is an embossed card. That means the image, the design is impressed into it. It's a very high one. And then what they do is somebody took an airbrush and they've airbrushed the light colors on there. And it makes the letters stand out because they airbrush on an angle from one direction. And then it highlights all the embossed. These sell fairly well. I was really surprised after I found that out. They don't all sell, but they have to be attractive and in decent condition. Even like on this corner issue here, this is something could be repaired. I could have just taken a little dab of Elmer's glue, touched it to the white spot, and folded that corner back to the left, and then held it together for a few seconds, and probably someone would have never known. That's, you know, an easy fix. I try not to do that, though, again, because it's not legit unless you're going to tell them, hey, I fixed the corner. So I just let somebody else mess with that. I don't spend the time. It's just not worth my time. My employees listed this. It was a bunch of postcards. I had postcards listed by, I think, 2 or 3 different people this week. And that's all they did is just list postcards. I had the photos already ready to go for them. And that's all they did. And that's why we sold, you know, and that's why we sold almost $2,000 worth of postcards just this week, because my guys hammered it this week. So I've recouped my labor for the entire week and next week already, and I still made $1,000+ profit off of this, just postcards. You know, if you can do $2,000 in anything a week, you know, that's what you need to hammer. And we're going to rotate items too, because we're going to bump up some of the sales in some of our other categories by having people list for 8-hour days throughout the week. Again, as I said, I've got people running, you know, longer shifts and more people and, you know, full hands on deck with employees. You know, it's going to be getting more and more hours in, and we're going to be spending a ton more, you know, as this progresses. By June 1st, we'll have everybody here, and we'll have a full open schedule, you know, Monday through Friday to just hammer out listings, you know, 100+ every single day of the week if we can manage that. And I will be taking the weekends off in this case and just relaxing, because it's going to be a long week for me to run that many and to adjust for people who can't come in early and late. I'll be doing 12-hour days probably, so I'll have 60-hour work week here throughout the summer is what I average. It may not be quite as much, you know, and I don't have to do that, but when they're working, I like to be here working too. You know, it sets a good example, and that's just how I've always been trained and raised. And, you know, you show and set the example, and that's how this works the best. As I said before in other videos, it's a package deal. This all works together. We make this profit. I do good on what we sell, because I take control of it, and, you know, I'm in the field here. I'm actually on the ground with the workers, and we're doing it together. So anyway, let's get rid of this one here. Another postcard. Again, as I said, these are postcards that we just got. This is a blue sky, I believe. Yeah, blue sky. I usually write that in here. This is actually hand painted, the blue. So the card was printed, and then through the line or production after it's printed, they're cut. And then somebody hand paints blue sky on the top of it. This sold for $50. I took a $50 offer on it. We sold a bunch of $50 postcards, and I mean a bunch to equal up to that. You know, we sold a bunch for hundreds of dollars plus in the postcard range. And, you know, I've got just as many to list for next week at these same prices and same price ranges. We may still hit postcards. I got some newer items in, and we can put some other lots together, so we may rotate it up here on next week. But you'll probably see what we decided to go with here next Sunday for this week on listings. But again, this was $50 here. This one did go for $24.50. It's I believe, the Singer sewing machine. Yeah, I had a bunch of these. Again, this is just something that shows up. This is actually the size of a postcard, and that's honestly where I found this at. $24.50. This went for better than most postcards, so I was happy with it. I paid $1 for it too. Again, postcards. I sold a couple of these collegiate ones to the same person. This one I took $30 for. The other one wasn't as good of a college. I believe this is not Pennsylvania State University. Maybe it was Penna or something like that. The gentleman told me I had the college wrong. I'm not up on sports. I'm not up on all this stuff, so I must have mixed it up. But it was still a decent team, and I still got $30 for this one. Again, this was probably $1 or less. Let me see here. Next one. Again, and I've talked about, you know, getting stuff up for the holidays. 4th of July needs to be up by everybody. If you're selling 4th of July collectibles, it needs to be up by, at the very latest, May 1st. That's just a given. The last 4 years in a row, that's what we did. The fifth year back, we didn't have stuff up, and we realized it was too late, so we played it by ear. We got them up early, and then we realized that it's by May, the very beginning of May, you need to have 4th of July up. For the collectors, for the crafters, for the people who are going to be buying stuff, it starts in May. That's when you need to have it up. People who are buying these, they want to put a collection together by the 4th. They want to have this stuff like decorations for a party or whatever they're doing. They're turning this into a placemat, or they're sealing an enamel and making something for a wall or something. Whatever the people are doing or buying for the start selling May 1st. That's literally about the ballpark what we've determined from almost 5 years of information on this. So we've had them all up. I've talked about that. You need to start putting up seasonal stuff well in advance, months in advance. Like, Halloween, we started working on a month and a half, 2 months ago to some extent. So, and Christmas, we started working on in January and February, trying to get Christmas wholesale, which we've already lined up. I've already signed deals for wholesale items for Christmas. You got to do it early. You got to do it when it's hot. And some people have already signed up last year for this coming up Christmas. So they're a year ahead of me even. So, you've got to watch out for that stuff. You've got to look ahead. This is not a month-by-month or a week-by-week game. This is a yearly endeavor for us. So I got to look at it on a year basis. What part of the year does this go up? What part of the year does that go up? And this is having your stuff, your ducks in a row, making sure you lined up what you need to do and how you need to do it. This is all part of the plan. This is how this whole thing works together, is to have these up. We sold a ton more of the 4th of July postcards. We could be wiped out of 4th of July cards well before the 4th of July ever hits at the rate we're going. I got a few more in, and we're going to put those up right away to keep this momentum going, but we're selling through on the 4th of July. I sold another 3 or 4 4th of July, just in one day. This one sold, I believe we took $20. Yeah, $20 for this one here. This one I did take 50 on this one. It was a cute image. This was actually in a photo collection. It was stapled to the page. You can see the staple holes up top. It's a really cute card. This is circa 1910. Real picture. He's got a cap gun from that era. And this is just one of those things. You never know what it's going to go for. I knew it would go for something because every time I've sold a cute little boy dressed up as a cowboy, an Indian, or anything like that, or dressed up as a soldier or whatever, they always sell. Always, always, always. 20, 30, 40. Again, here, $50. Let me see here. Next one. This is just a trade card. This is something we've had for a little while. I may have 90 cents in the listing this. We took 20 on it. Most beer places, saloons, that kind of stuff always sells for us, regardless. And it's got Blatt's Brewing Company, Lager, and Drought. It lists stuff on it. This is a decent item. These always sell. I'll just hold on to them. I usually never mark these down too much. I may take an offer on it, but I usually don't change the list price on the beer and saloon items because they will sell. It might, again, take a while. You might hold on to something for a while, but this is back to the residual income. I don't have to sell everything the same day I list it. I'd be wrapping up everything the next day. It would just be murder on us. So this staggers the sales throughout the time when you just list it and not worry about it. Just put it up, forget it. Forget that it was even there, and just go back. Keep track, and when you list this as a group, so like F22 on this listing, I can tell you the day this was listed. I can tell you when I did a discount if I did one, or if I changed the title, or any of that stuff, because I only do that on one specific day. I'll do everything in F22 on one day. So that way I can keep track on when it was altered, the sales and the whole works, and you can go from there. That's another easy way that helps you out if you put the item, my bin number in the title. I know it's distracting to some people, but for me, it helps me, and it's an immediate, easy look at it. I don't have to enter into a listing or view details or sales records or anything to know where it was, and, a quick instant lookup. And I can also look it up that way as well, easy too. So, next item. This one here was only up for like 2 hours, and I should have put it up for a little higher. I hadn't seen this one, but I know the series this is from. The item itself, what it's selling or promoting, isn't a huge ordeal. This is some kind of hat hanger or something to hang your hats on. It's probably like a hook that mounts it on the wall. But this has a boy. Here you can see it a little better. This is about the size of a postcard, maybe, somewhere in that range. But he's got a baseball bat and a baseball. And it's sold so quick because of that. Anything like pre-1910-ish, Nothing really much newer than that like this will sell really quick like that. But the pre-1910 or before, the older the better for baseball stuff. So if I've got like an 1880s or 1870s or 1890s card with somebody holding a baseball bat or something, it's going to sell. I don't care what it's for. As long as it's in decent condition, you're going to sell it no matter what for, 15, 20 bucks minimum. And again, right here, 27.15. It's not really even that obvious of an image because it's just a boy, but you can see the ball and you can see the bat in his hand. And again, I know the series this is from. There's 4 images that go along with it. There are 3 more. It's a 4-image set. Next one. This is an Archer. It's a hard plastic figure. I run into these at least maybe once a week or so, especially when I'm doing, antique malls and things like that. They'll have a bag of Army men. I got some just the other day. I got 2 or 3 of these in that lot. They come in yellows. They're a lot of marbled colors where they're almost like an iridescent or a metallic, and they're really light. They're hard plastic, very, very hard. This will break if you tried to bend it. It would just snap and crack. This is from the 50s. They're 3 and 5/8 inches tall. They vary a little bit in that size, but you can get them in all kinds of, space-looking figures. They look like Buck Rogers a lot. There's aliens and stuff like that as well, too. I took $10 out of this one, too, so. And it sat for a little while, 45 cents in a listing, but I got, a nickel or something in this thing. I bought it in a big bag lot. And we've already made our profit and then some, over and over again on these bag lots. These little figures sell all the time. Okay, now here we go. Here's a better card. I showed this in a video just, I think, last Monday or something, or Tuesday. This is a Cal Nevada Lodge, Lake Tahoe. Now, this one sold, the last one that was a higher price sold for $100 was $99.99 or something like that. That was 3 months ago. I went to look at it again. It was literally dropped off. The newest one, the last one of this that sold, other than mine, went for $19.99. I took $125 on this one. See, that's one issue that you can run into if you're pricing it too cheap. The last one that went for $19.99 was on a buy it now. The person didn't put a high price on it. He didn't think it was worth a ton of money. He didn't know and didn't do his research that Lake Tahoe items sell. You can look that one up yourself, too. If you Google this, the Cal Nevada Lodge, you should be able to find the $100, the $99.99 card, and you can kind of compare yourself. This person may have, researched and put his card up, after that one dropped off of eBay. I look at Tahoe cards every month, at least once a month. I've got it written on a calendar that I look up Tahoe cards to see, price range on some of these, because I sell Tahoe cards, 6, 7 months in a row. I've sold Tahoe cards every single month for decent money because I look for those. I bomb places and just look just for those. We will hit a antique mall. We'll drive an hour to one even sometimes, and I'll bomb every single booth that has postcards and look through every one for those. This one we got $125 for. This is the cheap one that I got from Tahoe that we sold this week. This week. This is why we're selling almost $2,000 worth of postcards just this week. And again, we're going to move on, and you're going to see some better ones too. 1925 I got out of this one. It's a set. I've got all the presidents up to the 1880s that were elected, Washington and all. And we sell one, once every week or two of these we'll sell. They're just like is this one for candy? These come for, this is a candy card. This would have been given away when you bought a box of candy or something, These are fairly early. They sell very well. We had this one up. I've probably got like 40 cents in a listing it. And this is something I paid $1 or less for. This paper items you can get for practically nothing. It's small. Most people don't think it's worth much. It's flimsy paper, But I got $19.25 out of it. This one was up for a whopping maybe an hour and 10 minutes. I knew what this was because, I've been to Disneyland. I used to, do a lot of Disney stuff. I worked at Disney for 10 plus years. My artwork's still on display in some areas there. This one here sold immediately. This is the Space Age Lodge. And this is a historical place. I don't remember if it's still there or not anymore these days. I haven't kept track of the actual place. I just remember the name, and I always look for this. And again, California stuff always sells. I sell more California postcards than anything else in postcards, unless it's like a really, really good train image or something from some other small town, or a really awesome Main Street image. It's usually the California ones I get the highest dollar for. Anything from the Space Age Lodge sells. And you can look some of these up, and you'll see that people put them up, for $7.99, buy it now, and then it's sold. Had they thought this is another reason here why I say, don't always pay attention to what other people sold these for. If I would have looked and saw that 7 people sold Space Age Lodge postcards for $7.99, and I decided, well, hey, I better put $7.99 on it too, I would have lost $7 more in sales. I don't put what everybody else has on it. If they're all buy it now, so if every item you see is a buy it now and they all went for $7.99, put it up for $29.99 or $15.99. Because on those, they all sold real quick. They're all gone. Every one of them's gone. So that would say, hey, they put too low of a price. They might have been able to put $40 on those or $50 on those instead of $7.99, and then they could have taken an offer for 20 some odd bucks. They were hot items enough to get an instant, quick buy it now. So, that's what I went for. So I doubled it. Next time I'll triple it because it sold so quick on this one, even at double what the last few went for. So you gotta pay attention to that. Don't just put what everybody else puts on the items. You're going to lose out sometimes. This would have been a perfect example of how I could have lost out. Let's see here. This one I took $100 for. It was like 99 on this one. This person bought 2 from the same town, and this is a perfect example of an awesome image on a postcard. I loved this one. I saved copies of some of these 2 on a file. One day I may throw them together in a book, but this is a real nice one. This is a real good RPPC, real picture postcard. Nice depot. The train's there. You can see people walking, their normal attire, the train yards. This is a real good card. Again, this is $1. I paid $1 for this one and $1 for the very next one you're going to see, and we got $200 back. They were up for 2 weeks. Here's the other one I took on. Again, together they were $200, these 2 cards. A real nice trolley stop. People, again, dressed to the T's. This is in the same area, same city, different track line, though. This is the local intramural or whatever it would be trolley car. So this was a killer one, too. People getting ready for work or whatever. You can see with luggage and bags and probably a lunchbox or 2. Just a good image. Again, these sell all the time. We did almost $2,000 just this week in postcards. And I still haven't even gotten to the best one yet. Again, photos I sell all the time. This week in photos, I did almost 500 in just these type of 8x10 photos. So I put them on sale, we marked them down, just a temporary markdown. In fact, I think I showed the markdown going on in effect in another video here on how to do it. And we sold a whole bunch off that right there. That same day I did the markdown or the discount on it, we sold like 160. And again, as I said, we've sold hundreds now this week in just these photos since I marked them down. I could have just left them and got a little higher price. It was good. I was happy to get an extra, 400 or 500 in sales off of just some stuff that was sitting around. I sell these every week regardless, so it's not a huge ordeal either way. Again, some more of these. This is from the Young Maverick. James Garner was the original Maverick. They did a short-lived TV series on Young Maverick with a new person doing it. I don't remember the show even being on air. It must have been on for maybe just 1 season or less. Another one. This is a redo from '71 when it started syndication. But this one sold again. I was pretty happy. If you're not familiar with the Cinderella Man, the movie with Mel Gibson playing the lead role, it's a real good movie, whether you like Mel Gibson or not. The movie is a heartwarming, real good movie. It's one of my favorites. We own it. The gentleman who's playing the boxer that Mel Gibson fights in the Cinderella Man, this is Max Mayer's father. If you didn't know that, that's an interesting fact. But Jethro Bodine's father is the real boxer in the Cinderella Man. He's the real story this is titled after. He's the villain in the movie. So just an FYI. I always found it interesting. Here's the primo one here. I showed this one. I told you it was going to get at least a couple $100 for it. I sold this one for $450 within 2 days. Again, this is part of my almost $2,000 in sales. This is a typical perfect example of a key Lake Tahoe postcard. I could have probably held out and maybe even gotten $600 for it, but a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush, and I've always taken that to heart. And at this point here, when I took the $450, we'd already paid for all the postcards and already made a couple $100 minimum on this. This lot now has given us these postcards. I got the last big bunch. We've already made well over $1,200 in profit off of those postcards. This is part of the reason why I dig for these things everywhere I go. Again, I sell Lake Tahoe cards every single week, almost. Every single month I'm making, a ton of money in Lake Tahoe cards. Get them while it's hot. This is one of those items I've told you about. I have $450 for one postcard. A lot of people think that's shocking, but this is the highest I've ever gotten for a postcard. And even in the slightest bit, we've sold them for, $500-600 for Titanic postcards, $1,000 baseball player postcard. So this stuff sells. You just got to look for it. And a lot of people pass this up to even a dealer. This was nothing. A dealer's probably kicking himself right now for selling this if he knew this is what this went for. This is how you make the money. You've got to know what you're doing. Research everything. Research, research, research. I can't tell you that enough. How can I sell this stuff? How come your sales are slow? I've researched stuff that sells better. That's my stuff or wanted stuff for the most part. I get stuff that somebody's going to want to buy. I don't care if they want to buy it immediately. I wouldn't even have had a problem if I had to hold on to this for a year to earn $450 out of it. I'd rather spend 45 cents or $1 or 60 cents in listing this for a year and get $450 than list it at a buy it now for $20 and try and sell it quickly. I don't care so much about that aspect. I don't care anymore if it sits here for a long time. And our philosophy when we started the first year was let's sell and get some money coming in, of course. I get that. I see that. I did that. We lived through that as well. We did 60, 70-hour work weeks for a year straight or better. I've earned and put in hours and hours and hours of time. I've sacrificed my life for a year or two to get to this point where we can sell and hold on to stuff and make a ton of money selling this. 5 years ago, I would have never guessed I could make $2,000 a week in postcards, or $2,000 a week in records, or $2,000 a week in Victorian cards, or Christmas cards, or paper items in general. I mean, this is how we're selling so much. This month, we're probably going to be up to, we could be as high as $14,000 in just selling paper. Just paper. Nothing else counting in that total. None of the records, which we sell, a ton each week. No exaggeration. This is how we did it. We put in the time and labor and hardship and the whole works and spent every dime we had to research and find new items and find the categories. And we put in hard work. We put in the footwork. We worked and, lack of sleep for a long time. And that was our life, was putting in the time to get to this point. But that's the card. That's the biggest postcard we sold this week. Let's see here. I've talked about buttons. I've got a button video that we're editing right now, so it should be up here within a day or two. This one here, I bought a whole bunch of buttons off of a card, like 30 or 40 off of, maybe even up to 60 off of one card for like $1 or $2, and I've been selling them for $4 or $5 constantly, over and over and over and over again. So this is just a perfect example. $4 I got, or actually $4.50 plus they spent the $3.50 on shipping for this little tiny button that's plastic. I right now have hundreds of these still to list. I could spend a couple days, with every employee just listing buttons if that's what I wanted to do. I scatter it. We try to make it so it's doesn't get boring for everybody. It's different items and things like that. So, but buttons, you can't pass these up either. This is a bolo every day of the week for us because I sell buttons almost every other day. I sell a couple buttons. They always pay for themselves. This is like penny, not even that maybe into the card. A couple pennies I paid for this button. Or the other 20 I sold in the last week or two. Magazines I sell all the time. This one was up for like 40 cents worth of listing fees, So again, I don't mind holding on to something. I paid $1. I sold it for $14.50. I have, 40 cents in listing fees. So I got $1.40 with the item price, my listing fees, and then my final value fee. So I might have maybe let's just say $3. So that means I still made, $11.50 off this item. And it sat there. So who cares if it sits there? And who cares if you're only making $11.50 off this item? You bought a whole bunch of these. I buy magazines in big stacks, hundreds of them sometimes. At least 20 or 30 at a time, worst case scenario. And I pay $1, maybe $2 if they're a decent magazine. And then I'll throw them up and list a whole bunch of them in a day or two, and then just sit them there. I'll sell a few right away. Again, residual income again. a bunch will sell right away, and then as it goes by, I'll sell, a few each day, and then it'll stagger off, and then, that's how it works. That's residual income, building up a base of stuff that will sell. And again, I might not sell this magazine, for a year, but I'm going to sell another magazine today or tomorrow. Every other day I'll at least sell a magazine or two. Sometimes 2 or 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 a day I sell in magazines. One person might come through and say, oh, wow, you got a whole bunch of National Geographic. I want 10 of those. I want to finish off this year in my collection. That's why these sell. Let's go on to the next one. Again, records. I pulled this one off here just to give you an honest example on stuff and where it goes and how much you can make from stuff. I, again, talk about selling overseas. This record went for $200. I listed it. It was up for just a little while. I checked, the comps. I always put stuff up like this higher than everybody else because I can always take less for it. Then if I put it up for $400 and I take $200-$300 for it, wow, that's fine with me. I marked it down on sale. This is one of the sales. I think I even did this when I on the video as well too. I just marked down 30%. This is the one I did in the video that I showed you on how to do that. I researched the price again when the first offer came in on this. It took a day or two for the offer to come in. This was probably one of the watchers, that was watching this. He got a notice from eBay. One of the items on your watch list is now on sale, and he made an offer on it. And I took $200. I took $200 because the sale price on this record, if you go to PopPsych right now, that $200 is well above what anybody sold it for in the last year or two. This is going back a couple of years to get $200 for this, and I don't worry about that so much. It's a very nice looking copy. We actually went on vacation and we bought a bunch of records. I always shop when we're on vacation. I did not write the trip off as a business expense because we took the family. But I did earn enough to pay for it, and then some. This is another $200 back from our vacation, which was fully paid for within a week or two of getting back from the items that we found while we were on vacation. Wherever I go, this is my life. I've said it before, this is all I do on my life. I'm an internet seller and an artist, and I sell my artwork online too. So everything we do, every part of my life, I always do the internet and eBay and on with this stuff. All the sites we do religiously. If I'm on vacation, we've got laptops with us. My phone broadcasts Wi-Fi even out in the country. So, I'm not worried about losing anything. I don't usually take my items down while I'm on vacation because I have employees that can come to my house and pack them up that know how to do it and have done it before. So I'm never worried about that anymore. That's what I'm talking about, where you don't want to lose income ever. That's why I have a business owner's policy, because if something happens, I'm still covered. That's why I keep 90 days worth of stock, because then my employees can keep listing and sales will keep coming in, even if I'm out of the picture and hurt, or the wife's hurt, or whatever the case may be. I have somebody else to be able to do it. I do not lose income at all. I hear people taking their stuff off sale when they go out of town for a week or two. You don't have to do that if you have a staff. You don't have to lose $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000 or whatever the amount of income you'd lose in a week's worth of vacation time. Don't do it. Have somebody else in the picture. That helps with the whole aspect of it. If it's a husband and wife team, you both are going on vacation, so you need to figure out some way to not lose sales or anything while you're out of town. But again, this was $200, sold higher than most of the copies that I can see, at least all the ones for the last year or so. Again, go to PopPsych and look up Perk Lee, the docs. It's a classic. I recorded this for my own collection. I like the oddball ones. One day maybe I'll put a record together or something. Some of these, the copyright's dead, and you're able to do stuff with some vintage records, just FYI. Let's see here. The 1450, this one. Yeah, this was a new list. This is one of the ones in this week's quick list sales, 1450. I'm always hesitant on some of the New York ones, but usually if you can get a good early New York that has the early style cars or no cars, they're worth selling. There's just a couple cars in this image. This is a real early New York scene, so it's sold fairly well. 1450 full price right off the bat, with issues, minor wear. This is a Dresden. Now, if you don't know what Dresden is, it's the foil look of the material. It looks like a metallic almost. Most of the time they're gold. This is a silver Dresden. This is actually a fabric label. The number on the right where you see the 20, that's probably like a yard, and the 42 on the other side might be the price per yard or something along that line. But these are literally labels. They would have been pinned to a piece of fabric in a shop in the 1870s, 80s, 90s, maybe even in the 1910-ish era too. I took $24.50 for this one. I sell these all the time. Every week or two, one of these sells in this price range. I buy them all the time. Sometimes I've been lucky enough to get a sewing collection, and they'll have a bunch of these in there with needle purses and needle wallets and things like that. That's where I find these, because these show up in sewing collections all the time. People saved these, and you'll find these in 1910 era estates, and stuff like that. Let's see here. Bookmarks. I always look for bookmarks. And here's another perfect example. $29.99. It's an early one, 1870s, 80s. This one wasn't up a super long time. Maybe I have 90 cents in the listing it. Probably $1 I paid for it. I believe this probably came from an antique mall on this one. This one was up for that long, where I probably didn't have as many pickers as I do now. But bookmarks I always sell. I've sold celluloid bookmarks, from 1910 or before for $100, $150 in the past before. So bookmarks, if it looks like it's kind of ivory or has like a grain to it, those are usually celluloid if they're really flexible, and those sell for a ton of money. I sell everything celluloid I get, bookmarks, photos, cards, anything that's made out of celluloid sells. Business cards especially. It's out of the same one. I showed these in the video a week or so ago. This is Placerville. You can type in Placerville on eBay. It's just as good as Tahoe. It's literally on the way or right near Tahoe, and they always sell. I should have put that in the title, but I didn't realize that until after the fact, and it already had sold for $34.50, this one here, which is exactly what I quoted I would probably get for this card, because that's what these always sell for. These seldom show up. The place is defunct. It's on the way to Tahoe. It's a perfect example of good items. And I've sold a couple of these to different people right off the bat, within an hour or two of these being up. This is $7 I got out of this one. Everything's not a huge profit maker, but this is just pennies. I got nothing into this. I sold a bunch of these already. I've long since got my money back. All this is just profit now. Again, World's Fair and things like that always sell. This is a 1876 Centennial World's Fair, and you can see that it's that where it says of the Centennial Exposition. So this is a Vienna model bakery. It's an example of what a good bakery should look like. So this is probably, this company went into this Centennial Exposition in Philadelphia in 1876 and built a mock-up of a perfect bakery, and they were selling their cakes and stuff at the Centennial Exposition. And this card was only available if you walked into their booth or somewhere at this Centennial Exposition to get. And that's where this card came from. I got a collector, World's Fair collector. I bought a collection at an estate sale, and this was in there. There's postcards in there. There was some coins in there. There was some tokens. There was some postage stamps. I bought it all. Everything I could get my hands on from this person, and we've made a ton of money off of this kind of stuff. This one went for $50. So and I was happy with $50 too, because I've got a couple of these, honestly. And it's not in good condition either. Chewing gum stuff from, the turn of the century or before sells very well. This is an advertising for Adams Chewing Gum, Tutti Frutti, just a bunch of different kinds. Tolu, however you pronounce it, T-O-L-U. Anything that says that's like a chewing gum, licorice and stuff. And this one here, I think I took 15 a piece. The person bought 2, 15 each. Person bought 2 of them, this one and this one, for 15 each. And they're really nothing. I've got nothing into them. I may have $1 in listing fees between the 2 of them, and maybe a total like 50 cents into these. These are things you'd find in a big bin or a bag lot at a mall or something. But they sell very well. These, I think, I took $50 for these. Now, these are paper cowboys and Indian toys. This is from a set of these that might have been available in a book. I've never seen a complete bound version of this to tell you for sure, but most of the ones that I've seen that were partially complete list this as Wild Bill Hickok's Wild West Show or Extravaganza. These would have been cut out of like pages or a booklet or something, and the kids could have played with these. These are for like the kids who didn't have a lot of money and couldn't afford the little cast figures and things like that. And in general, these were still expensive for many kids too at the time. But they sold fairly well. All these little cutout people like this, I always nab up whenever I run into them at, especially antique malls, is probably the best place to find these at. But again, I got $50 for them. I probably got about 40 cents in the listing fees or less on these two. Much less, I'm sorry. This is only up for 3 months, 90 days. So 15 cents in the listing these. And if I remember right, again, I have $5 or less in the purchasing these. If I remember. It could even be way less than that, but I believe that's correct. Get down there. This one here, another $50 item. It's just a piece of paper. It's probably a cutout from the package that this came in, this knife. Henry Sears. There's Sears, they made scissors and things like that too. This is literally a queen razor. I've had a queen razor, so I knew what this was, or at least what it was for. It's some kind of weird elfin dude. It's an anthropomorphic, shaving mug too. So it was an interesting image. I really was surprised at 50, but all this razor and stuff like this is very hard to come by, especially the graphical items. For all I know, this was cut out of a book cover or something. I have no idea where this even came from, but $50 is what we got out of it. Again, these are the rare, the weird, oddball items. This is why my sales do not drop in the summer. I don't drop in the summer. I don't care what anybody else says or claims or wants to think about that. I sell items that do not have that aspect of it. These are items that you can't just walk down the street and find. I've spent hours and days and even years trying to track down and get people and get places and figure out where I can get this stuff. It didn't take, I didn't find this overnight. I didn't watch some YouTuber that told me if I sell 100 of these, I'm going to make $10,000 a week. That's not how this works. All of this took hours and days and a year or two of me slaving at this to get to this point, to know where to find this, to know what everything's worth. I've got 5 years invested in this full time. And on top of that, I've done eBay for 10 or 15 years, almost since the day it started. We've done eBay at some aspect ever since then. So I've been an internet person for a long time. We've cut the cord with satellite and TV 10 plus years ago. My kids, for the most part, barely remember having real TV. We've always had the cord cut. It's more like 10 or 12 years at least that we've had the cord cut, and I've been totally internet. I've spent all my time doing this kind of stuff, so I do know and have ways to find stuff, and I do know where to look and inside information that you won't know until you've put the time in. I'm not going to give you all the keys and clues to get everything. I've spent my life, I've spent the last 5 years of my life getting to this point. I'm going to give you a ton of stuff. All it's going to take you to do is do some research and step outside of the box. And you can be, swinging and selling these kind of items too. It's not impossible. It's just a little hard for you to get into this if you don't have the willpower and the need to do this. For us, I didn't want to work for anybody. We needed a job. I needed something to pay off a college loan. I needed to be able to afford my bills and to, be able to do stuff for my kids. And, after we graduated, I've got a master's degree. I've got a couple bachelors. I've got an IT degree as well, too. And none of those degrees can get me where I want to go at this point. The market's terrible for jobs. More and more people are coming out and, it's moving to tech. And even with my tech degree, I just couldn't sit there. I didn't want to be working nights again. I didn't want to, be slaving, for somebody else at a salaried position and earning them all the money. I'm doing it all myself now, and I'm earning it all for myself. So anyway, let's move on to the next item. Piano rolls I do sell quite often. These can go media mail too. It's media. This could be actually recorded in the presence of this person. Some of the sports collectors will know the name Billy Sunday. You may not know that he was into religion and he was a pastor of some sort, and that's why this one's sold. So piano rolls sold even in not the greatest condition. They can be repaired. They can be resurfaced on the edge and recut so that you can replay them. And somebody will play this probably at this point. But these sell too. I haven't shown one of these before. I don't sell these very often. I've only got a couple left. Usually I don't buy these much anymore unless there's some really good jazz or something screwball-y. If I'm offered a huge lot of these, I'll probably usually just see if I can't buy a couple singles. If not, I usually pass. These aren't big movers. But if you get some early jazz, Jelly Roll Morton or something weird, or Louis Armstrong or something, some of those do sell. Some of the newer ones sell too with the words written on them so you can actually sing along. It's like a karaoke basically of the day. But that's a piano player roll. And the last item I'll show you today, another one of California cards. And again, I took $34.50 for this. That's like a set area price-wise, which I look for and price things at. So, $34.50 for this. Again, we did almost $2,000 in postcards, and most of that is, Tahoe and California postcards. So, you just got to be on the lookout for this kind of stuff. Postcards always sell for us, again, almost $2,000 this week alone in just new postcards. And this is how I don't drop in the summer. I've got employees listening to a ton of stuff this week, a ton. But, in that ton of stuff, the $2,000 worth of sales of postcards, half of that paid for 2 weeks worth of labor. And then the rest of it is almost all profit. And that's just the postcards that I'm talking about here. You know, you're worried about hiring or stuff. If you don't have the stuff, obviously, to sell, don't hire somebody to do it. If you can't source the stuff, once you get your sourcing down, though, and you can find the stuff that's going to make you the money, your problems are almost all solved. It's just now at this point, once you get the items and find the sources and find a routine source. Again, I've talked about reliable sources. Garage sales aren't reliable, at least not for me. Neither are thrift stores. I can almost always get something good in a thrift store, but not enough quantity to make every trip worth my while. So the sources that I get stuff from, I always get enough to make it worth my while. I'm buying in quantity. I'm almost always buying 50, 60, or 70, even hundreds of items at a single time. And that's how this works for us, and that's how I can afford to hire people to pay them to list for me. You know, I've got multiple laptops. They'll sit here, while I'm present, and we'll all list a whole bunch of stuff together. It's a big team effort to do this. You know, we buy pizza on those days, or my wife will cook dinner, or I'll cook dinner, and we'll feed them. You know, they'll take a break, and we'll feed them, and then, they're going to list a bunch of stuff, and we're going to make a ton of money off of that. You know, we more than doubled our investment for a 2-week time frame in just 1 week. It's a no-brainer for you if you're selling the right items. Again, people who are worried and their sales aren't going up and they don't have sales and people aren't looking at their items, or whatever the case may be, you got to have good items for this to work. You can't be selling what every single person is selling, because you've got 1,000 people doing the same thing as you, selling the same items and the same clothing or the same anything, or 1,000 people selling the exact same video game or the same video system or whatever you're selling. It just doesn't work like that. You got to have items that are going to be wanted immediately or wanted at some point, or enough items that are wanted that you can worry about the residual income at this point. You know, if I stopped selling anything or stopped listing, I'd still make, thousands of dollars a week, even if we didn't list anything new. It would take months and months, maybe even a year or two, for our sales to go down enough where it would drastically kill my business. You know, we'd still be taking in enough to pay our bills and put money aside, even without listing new items for a little while. Even for a month or two is possible. It just depends on what you have up and what you buy to run and resell. You know, so that's just what it is. You've got to think outside the box. You've got to invest the time, and I say this in probably every video. If you're not researching something, you're losing out. I research something every single day. I'll be sitting there bored, or I'll be waiting for one of the kids. I'll be sitting in the car, and I'll just type in some random word on eBay in the collectibles section or the antiques section or whatever section you're thinking about. But I usually stick to, obviously, antiques and collectibles. And I'll type in some random word like gold or velvet, or just throw some word out there, blue, just something, huge lot, or speckled, or something like that, and see what comes up. You know, you're going to learn something for sure. And I've done this for years. I'll just throw something out there and just see, and then I'll look up, only closed items, ended items, and I'll see what's sold. And then if I find something, well, I'm really surprised, I didn't know that was worth something, I'll just look for that specific item and then kind of do some comparisons. And that could lead you to another item that you could find that's worth something to buy. Just do random searches. Crazy as that may sound, that's how I found many things that I could sell. I didn't run into Tahoe because somebody told me specifically, here, go buy Tahoe items. I did it by accident. That's just one of those random things I do. But that's about it in what we've sold. Again, this is just random items. I picked some better items. I picked some odd items. I threw out all the common stuff so you don't have to mess with seeing that. I'd like to strive to offer and to show you things that you just can't see everywhere else, and try to expand your knowledge enough so that you're going to make more money. If you're not expanding, you're not making more money. If you're not learning or researching something, you're not making more money. So that's about it for today.
Well, there you have it. There's some of the items we've sold, some advice, some comments on it. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you saw something you could actually sell yourself. But if you liked it, please hit the like button below, subscribe, tell a friend, and if there's any questions or anything, please comment below.